May 28, 1940, Berlin. Reich Marshal Hermann Göring tossed the intelligence report onto his desk with open disdain. It contained President Roosevelt's appeal to Congress for an enormous increase in aircraft production, an audacious goal of 50,000 planes a year. Göring's lip curled in scorn as he addressed his subordinates. "So, the Americans believe this kind of boast will unsettle us," he sneered. "They understand nothing of true war industry. Let them attempt to turn their car plants into aircraft factories. They'll soon discover that building fighters and bombers demands far more than conveyor belts and untrained hands." What Göring could not comprehend was that, in Detroit, a Danish-born industrialist named William Knudsen was already turning Roosevelt's vision into reality. The former president of General Motors, now serving as the nation's wartime production chief for a symbolic salary of $1 a year, was engineering the greatest industrial mobilization the world had ever seen. Under his direction, America's vast manufacturing base began to awaken with astonishing speed. Within just 4 years, U.S. factories would not only exceed the dismissed goal of 50,000 aircraft, but nearly double it, producing close to 100,000 planes annually while sustaining 2 distant wars across opposing oceans. The announcement that provoked German scorn was made on May 16, 1940, as panzer divisions swept relentlessly across France. Addressing a tense Congress, President Franklin D. Roosevelt boldly declared, "I should like to see this nation geared up to the ability to turn out at least 50,000 planes a year." His words, visionary yet staggering in scope, were met with doubt, even from America's allies. The numbers seemed impossible. In 1939, the United States had built only 3,611 military aircraft, and the Army Air Corps operated a mere 1,700 combat planes, most hopelessly outdated. Still, Roosevelt demanded a 14-fold expansion, challenging America to transform industry into the engine of democracy's survival. William Knudsen emerged as the driving force behind this industrial marvel. When questioned about who could possibly accomplish such an unimaginable feat, presidential advisor Bernard Baruch answered without hesitation. First, Bill Knudsen. Second, Bill Knudsen. Third, Bill Knudsen. The Danish-born executive had left behind a $300,000 salary to serve his adopted homeland, applying the proven methods of automotive mass production to the vastly more complex task of building aircraft, turning assembly lines once meant for cars into engines of wartime transformation. The industrial transformation commenced without delay. By December 1941, American factories were turning out 2,000 military aircraft each month, a staggering 20-fold rise compared to just 2 years earlier. Ford Motor Company revealed plans for an immense bomber plant at Willow Run, Michigan, while Boeing rapidly expanded its Seattle operations. Douglas Aircraft recruited thousands of new workers to meet soaring demand. Across the nation, factories once devoted to peacetime production were retooled and energized, signaling the full awakening of the arsenal of democracy and the United States' emergence as a global industrial powerhouse. The Nazi leadership's disregard for American capabilities arose from a toxic mix of racial prejudice and deliberate self-deception. General Friedrich von Boeticher, Germany's military attaché in Washington between 1933 and 1941, consistently provided detailed and accurate reports on the United States' expanding industrial capacity. In a December 1940 dispatch, he cautioned, "American war production will reach unimaginable heights." Berlin, however, dismissed these assessments as defeatist exaggeration. When Boeticher met Hitler in February 1939 to outline America's potential, the Führer dismissed evidence entirely, launching into tirades about supposed American racial inferiority, labeling them half-Judaized, half-negrified, and incapable of sustaining a long-term conflict. This willful ideological blindness would later prove catastrophic for the Reich. Prejudice infiltrated every level of Nazi analysis. Luftwaffe intelligence scoffed at reports of women working in aircraft factories, interpreting them as evidence of American desperation rather than innovation. The idea that a democratic society could mobilize with greater efficiency than a totalitarian regime seemed inconceivable. When data arrived showing factories operating around the clock in 3 shifts, German analysts dismissed it as hyperbole. The rigid Nazi worldview could not grasp the scale or ingenuity of American industrial capability, leaving them blind to the growing strength of a nation they had underestimated at every turn. By September 1943, Willow Run's monthly output had climbed to 148 bombers, rising to 365 by December. The true turning point came in April 1944, when the plant achieved an astonishing 428 B-24s in a single month. One bomber completed every 63 minutes around the clock. Remarkably, this lone factory was producing more aircraft than the entire German aviation industry combined, showcasing the unprecedented scale and efficiency of American wartime manufacturing. German pilots first grasped the scale of American industrial power during the Tunisia campaign. In December 1942, Major Johannes Steinhoff, commanding JG-77, recorded, "The American pilots are no longer amateurs." Most troubling, their numbers grow daily. Throughout 1943, the reality became ever clearer. On January 27th, American bombers struck Germany for the first time, 64 aircraft targeting Wilhelmshaven. By October, during Black Thursday at Schweinfurt, the Luftwaffe witnessed a stark lesson. Even after losing 60 B-17s in a single raid, the Americans could replace them within 2 weeks. The arithmetic of industrial might was undeniable, and German forces could no longer ignore it. During Big Week, from February 20th to 25th, 1944, the U.S. 8th and 15th Air Forces launched 3,500 bomber sorties targeting German aircraft production. The Luftwaffe suffered losses of between 262 and 355 fighters, but the more devastating blow was the death of roughly 100 experienced, irreplaceable pilots. General Adolf Galland reported to Göring that Germany was losing 1,200 fighters each month while producing only 1,000, whereas the United States was manufacturing 2,500 fighters monthly and losing just 400. The stark disparity revealed a widening gap in air power and industrial capacity. Major Heinz Bahr, one of Germany's leading aces with 220 confirmed kills, recounted a mission over Brunswick in January 1944. The bomber formation extended endlessly across the horizon, composed of at least 700 B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators. Facing them were only 8 Luftwaffe fighters. The odds were overwhelming, the situation desperate, and any hope of success all but vanished against the sheer scale of the American assault. By 1944, American aircraft production had reached unprecedented levels. In that single year, U.S. factories rolled out 96,270 planes, including 16,048 four-engine bombers, 35,743 fighters, and 22,591 multi-engine aircraft. Remarkably, this output in just 12 months surpassed Germany's total aircraft production over the entire war, estimated at roughly 94,677 planes, highlighting the immense industrial advantage the Allies had achieved. The gap between American and German air forces extended far beyond sheer numbers. Each U.S. bomber was armed with multiple .50 caliber machine guns and carried thousands of rounds, while German fighters increasingly took to the skies with only partial ammunition. American aircraft also boasted powered gun turrets, advanced bomb sights, and sophisticated navigation systems, whereas many German planes struggled with unreliable radios and outdated equipment, leaving them at a severe tactical disadvantage during engagements. By May 1944, Boeing's Seattle Plant 2 was turning out 16 B-17s each day. Douglas Aircraft, which had employed only 68 people in 1936, had expanded to 167,000 workers spread across 9 facilities. North American Aviation was producing 500 P-51 Mustangs each month, while Lockheed managed to complete a P-38 Lightning every 90 minutes, all while incorporating 2,127 combat-driven design modifications. The scale and efficiency of American aircraft production had become a force capable of overwhelming any opposition. Supporting industries kept pace with the aircraft manufacturers' rapid expansion. General Motors produced 57,658 aircraft engines under license, while Packard manufactured 55,523 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines. Alcoa boosted aluminum production by 600%, and Dow Chemical increased magnesium output from 6 million pounds annually to 333 million, supplying the critical materials that powered America's wartime aviation surge. The transformation of the American workforce defied every Nazi expectation. Women, who had made up less than 1% of aircraft workers in 1941, constituted 65% by 1943, totaling 310,000 employees in the industry. At Douglas Long Beach Plant, 22,380 of 41,620 workers were women. Rose Monroe, the original Rosie the Riveter, drove 3,000 rivets per shift at Willow Run with remarkable 99.5% accuracy. Female inspectors at Douglas cut defect rates from 3.2 to 0.3%. Ford adapted tools for smaller hands, unintentionally boosting efficiency, while lighter pneumatic equipment and strategically repositioned workstations reduced fatigue and workplace injuries, dramatically enhancing overall productivity. German intelligence misread the surge of female workers as a sign of American desperation. A captured Luftwaffe report dismissed them as temporary labor, predicting inevitable declines in quality. In reality, women excelled in precision tasks, assembling wiring, instruments, and performing inspections with remarkable accuracy. Their contributions showcased the organizational strength and resilience of a democratic workforce rather than any weakness. As American aircraft production surged, German leadership increasingly clung to illusion. In February 1944, Göring approved the Jaeger program, dispersing aircraft manufacturing in 729 underground sites manned by forced labor. The so-called Middle Complex alone enslaved 60,000 prisoners under appalling conditions, resulting in 20,000 deaths. These subterranean factories generated more defective parts than functional aircraft, as laborers sabotaged components and the fragmented system caused constant logistical delays. Quality control disintegrated entirely. Remarkably, the entire Middle Complex produced fewer engines each month than Ford's single Chicago plant, underscoring the catastrophic inefficiency of Germany's desperate wartime improvisation. At the same time, American technological progress surged forward. Boeing implemented modular construction for the B-29 across 4 plants, ensuring all components were fully interchangeable. Each pressurized bomber, priced at $65,000, featured advanced innovations that Germany could not replicate, even in experimental models. By early 1945, production had reached a remarkable pace of 100 B-29s per month, highlighting the extraordinary efficiency and ingenuity of U.S. wartime industry. June 6, 1944, revealed the full power of American and Allied industrial might. The Normandy invasion saw 11,590 Allied aircraft take to the skies against just 319 German sorties, achieving an overwhelming 36-1 superiority. This was not merely a tactical edge. It was the result of industrial dominance. In the months leading up to D-Day, from January to May 1944, Allied bombers had dropped 145,000 tons on German targets, surpassing the total tonnage of German raids on Britain throughout the entire war. On the day of the invasion, transport planes delivered 3 airborne divisions in a single operation, utilizing more aircraft than Germany's entire transport fleet had ever fielded. By December 1944, Allied air raids had reached staggering scale, with 1,200 bombers accompanied by 900 fighter escorts. P-51 Mustangs boasted the range to strike targets as far as Poland, superior performance against any adversary, and numbers so vast that losses were inconsequential. German pilots nicknamed them Indians, overwhelmed by the sense that these fighters could appear everywhere at once. As the Reich faced imminent defeat, even Nazi leaders could no longer ignore the scale of their industrial collapse. In December 1944, Goebbels recorded in his diary, Göring's claims of Luftwaffe superiority now read as criminal delusions. We confront the world's greatest industrial power armed only with words. Before D-Day, RLM staff were warned the Americans can lose 10 tanks for every one we destroy and still overwhelm us. Their material advantage will render any defensive position untenable. By January 1945, Hitler himself admitted to Scheer, "We should have heeded Boetticher's reports. Their industrial output was decisive. While we produced hundreds, they produced tens of thousands." Albert Speer later testified that American bombing campaigns slashed German production by 35% for tanks, 31% for aircraft, and 42% for trucks. He asserted without hesitation that the systematic targeting of industrial facilities by American forces directly caused the collapse of Germany's armaments output, crippling their ability to sustain the war effort. Germany's Messerschmitt Me-262 jet, which became operational in mid-1944, was a remarkable technological achievement, capable of flying 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied fighter. Hitler and Göring pinned their hopes on this wonder weapon to regain air superiority despite overwhelming numerical disadvantage. Yet production totaled only 1,430 aircraft, with fewer than 200 operational at any one time. The engines demanded overhauls every 10 hours, and shortages of critical materials forced the use of inferior substitutes, severely limiting performance and reliability in combat. Meanwhile, the United States had launched jet development as early as 1942. Although the Bell P-59 lagged behind German designs, Lockheed's P-80 Shooting Star, outperforming any German jet, entered production before the war concluded. American industrial capacity enabled the simultaneous development of multiple advanced technologies, a capability Germany simply lacked, leaving them unable to match the Allies' technological and production advantages. The contrast highlighted the decisive outcome of the production struggle. Germany's advanced jet technology counted for little against America's capacity to manufacture thousands of conventional fighters while simultaneously advancing next-generation aircraft. In total war, superior technology alone was meaningless without the industrial scale to match it, making quality irrelevant when quantity determined victory. Hermann Göring's capture on May 8, 1945, by elements of the U.S. 36th Infantry Division signaled the start of his forced reckoning with reality. At the Augsburg Interrogation Center, he remained defiant, insisting that German technology had been superior and defeated only by Allied numerical superiority. Following this, he was moved to Camp Ashcan in Luxembourg, the specialized detention site for senior Nazi officials, where he faced relentless questioning designed to extract a full account of the Third Reich's military, political, and industrial operations. In July 1945, Major Kenneth Heckler carried out detailed interviews capturing Göring's growing acknowledgement of American industrial dominance. I was aware that American industrial potential was significant, Göring confessed to Heckler, but the reality exceeded even my worst fears. That single Willow Run factory produced more aircraft than our entire bomber force at its peak. It was beyond comprehension. He was especially struck by U.S. logistical capabilities. Your ability to sustain forces across two oceans while simultaneously maintaining domestic production. This was unimaginable to us. We struggled to supply units 500 miles from Germany, yet you were supplying armies 5,000 miles from home. At Nuremberg, Göring was confronted with compelling proof of America's industrial might. Prosecutors displayed charts illustrating that by 1944, U.S. factories were producing more aircraft each month than Germany could produce in an entire year. Simultaneously, films of Willow Run's immense assembly lines were shown, while officials enumerated the German cities obliterated by bombers manufactured at that single, extraordinary facility. On March 14, 1946, Göring testified, grappling with the staggering reality before him. He acknowledged that he had always recognized the United States' remarkable economic and technological capabilities, especially within its Air Force. Yet, even with that awareness, he could not have foreseen the sheer magnitude of their achievement, expanding aircraft production 100-fold in just 4 years. The speed, scale, and efficiency of this transformation defied all notions of feasibility, leaving him awestruck and struggling to reconcile expectation with fact. Prison psychologist G.M. Gilbert recorded Göring's relentless fixation on production figures. Time and again, he ran calculations, juxtaposing the output of a single American factory against Germany's entire industrial effort. Willow Run consumed his attention above all, which he bitterly labeled that damned factory that broke our backs. Confronted with the stark totals, 812,615 American aircraft engines compared to Germany's 241,675, Göring could only stare in mute disbelief. The stark arithmetic left no room for debate, laying bare the unassailable scale of Germany's industrial collapse and the grim reality of defeat. The scale of this transformation is astonishing. In 1940, the United States possessed just 3,611 military aircraft. By the war's conclusion, production had surged to 295,959 planes, 97,810 bombers, 99,465 fighters, and 98,684 other types. This achievement reflected not only sheer numbers, but also a comprehensive mastery of industrial organization, efficiency, and innovation across every stage of aircraft manufacturing. At its height, the American aircraft industry employed 2 million workers, encompassing a level of diversity previously unseen. Women, African Americans, Mexican Americans, Native Americans, the disabled, teenagers, and the elderly all contributed. This broad-based, voluntary effort outperformed any totalitarian system, demonstrating that democratic mobilization, driven by initiative and cooperation, surpassed the efficiency of coerced labor in every measurable way. The Americans who entered aircraft factories in 1941 with little to no technical experience emerged by 1945 as the most accomplished aviation workforce in history. They did more than assemble airplanes. They redefined the very nature of industrial production. Techniques such as statistical quality control, first applied to bomber manufacturing, became a global standard. Automation innovations pioneered at Willow Run reshaped factories around the world. Engineers who optimized bomber assembly lines went on to design the Saturn V rocket, while women who riveted B-24s nurtured the generation that would walk on the moon. This industrial triumph extended far beyond the war, ushering in the American century. The scale of American war production shattered conventional economic expectations. Producing aircraft cost $45 billion in 1940s dollars, roughly $800 billion in today's terms, with the B-29 program alone exceeding the expense of the Manhattan Project. Yet instead of plunging the nation into financial crisis, this industrial surge generated extraordinary prosperity. Unemployment, which had haunted the Depression, disappeared entirely, while personal incomes doubled between 1940 and 1945. Workers themselves fueled the expansion through war bond purchases, exemplified by Willow Run employees who collectively bought $45 million in bonds, effectively funding the very factory where they built the planes that would win the war. By 1944, Germany devoted nearly 40% of its entire industrial capacity to aircraft production, yet still managed less than half of what America produced. Reliance on forced labor proved disastrous. Sabotage was rampant, quality deteriorated, and efficiency suffered. After 1943, output per German worker fell sharply, while American productivity surged, increasing threefold and demonstrating the decisive advantage of skilled, motivated labor. The wartime production network laid the groundwork for America's post-war economic boom. Aluminum plants, originally casting bomber frames, shifted to supplying materials for sprawling suburban homes. Chemical facilities that refined aviation fuels transitioned to producing plastics for everyday products. Machine tool factories, once dedicated to aircraft assembly, now equipped a broad spectrum of industry, positioning the United States for unrivaled global industrial leadership. Beyond sheer output, American industry showcased unmatched organizational mastery. The War Production Board orchestrated the efforts of 184,000 companies with remarkable precision. IBM punch card systems monitored millions of parts across sprawling supply networks, ensuring flawless coordination. Meanwhile, MIT's radiation laboratory, staffed by 4,000 scientists, pioneered advanced navigation technologies, granting American bombers unprecedented all-weather operational capability. When battlefield experience exposed the B-17's susceptibility to frontal assaults, Boeing engineered and installed chin turrets in just 60 days. In the Pacific, extended-range B-24s were redesigned and integrated without halting production. While German upgrades dragged on for months or even years, American adjustments were executed within weeks. This extraordinary flexibility proved as critical to victory as sheer output. American aircraft development advanced at an unprecedented pace, driven by real-time lessons from combat theaters around the world. Observations from battles in the Pacific were transmitted to factories in the Atlantic within days, enabling rapid design adjustments. In contrast, German planes, built in remote underground factories by forced labor, remained largely unchanged for months. The continuous feedback loop from pilot reports to engineers solutions to assembly lines, and workers' insights back to designers, maximized efficiency. This open, collaborative system of information flow consistently outperformed the rigid, top-down German command structure, proving that adaptability could rival raw production in determining wartime success. On October 15, 1946, just hours before his execution, Hermann Göring composed his final letter, offering his fullest acknowledgement of the pivotal role of industrial might in World War II. He conceded that Germany had not fallen to superior soldiers, but to superior factories. The United States, once dismissed as a producer of mere consumer goods, had overwhelmed the Luftwaffe and the Wehrmacht alike, burying German forces beneath an unrelenting flood of aluminum, steel, and ceaseless industrial output that no battlefield valor could counter. In his final documented conversation with Gilbert, Göring offered a stark confession. "We waged war against an industrial colossus while it slumbered. Once it stirred, our fate was sealed. They didn't merely outproduce us, they transformed production itself. Every component of their system outmatched ours, leaving German industry helpless against the relentless efficiency and scale of American manufacturing." Göring took his own life that night, yet his final reflections endure as a historical judgment on the production struggle. The Reichsmarshal, who had long underestimated American industry, passed away with the knowledge that a single U.S. factory had outproduced the total output of his entire Luftwaffe across its existence. Military historians widely regard American industrial output as the pivotal element in the Allied triumph. Without the staggering material advantage it generated, operations like D-Day could not have succeeded, strategic bombing would have faltered, and victory in the Pacific would have been unattainable. Richard Overy, a preeminent authority on the air war, emphasized the decisive factor was not courage or tactical genius, but the sheer scale of production. Ultimately, the Allies prevailed by overwhelming their adversaries with a relentless and unmatched torrent of industrial might. The statistics leave no room for doubt. By 1944, American factories were turning out more military aircraft than the combined total of all other nations, Axis and Allied alike. This was not a modest advantage. It was a staggering order of magnitude supremacy. Germany confronted not mere defeat, but the prospect of total annihilation under the weight of unmatched American production. The true impact of the production miracle went far beyond winning the war. It demonstrated that democratic systems could outmatch dictatorships, that liberty fostered greater achievement than tyranny, and that voluntary collaboration surpassed coerced labor. The monumental output was driven not by slaves or conscripted laborers, but by empowered citizens working together toward a shared national goal. Hermann Göring's underestimation of American industrial strength remains one of history's most disastrous misjudgments. His scorn for the productivity of a free, democratic workforce blinded him to the scale of what the United States could achieve. This fatal miscalculation not only condemned Germany to defeat, but also contributed to the loss of millions of lives, ensuring the Third Reich's collapse long before the first Allied bombers appeared over German territory. The leap from producing 3,000 to 100,000 aircraft per year illustrated the extraordinary capacity of a free society confronted with an existential crisis. American workers not only fulfilled Roosevelt's ambitious targets, they surpassed them. In doing so, they outproduced Germany 5 times over, all while sustaining a relentless war effort across the Pacific, proving that voluntary, organized labor could achieve feats once thought impossible. Modern leaders should take heed of Göring's fatal error, underestimating democratic nations for their peaceful nature or assuming that free people's preference for prosperity over conquest limits their capacity invites disaster. In 1940, America seemed ill-equipped for war, yet by 1944 it had transformed into an industrial juggernaut, capable of overwhelming any adversary with unmatched production and organizational power. The arsenal of democracy demonstrated that factories could wield as much power as battlefields, that the hands of assembly workers could influence outcomes as profoundly as trained troops, and that the scale and efficiency of industrial mobilization could decide wars just as decisively as any battlefield maneuver. Göring grasped this truth only after it was too late, a realization that came at the ultimate price, the ruin of his nation. From a moment he scoffed at Roosevelt's declaration in May 1940 to his final moments before execution at Nuremberg in October 1946, Hermann Göring's life mirrored the downfall of Nazi Germany. His scorn for American industrial power came to symbolize the Third Reich itself, a regime that conflated ideology with competence, equated oppression with strength, and imagined that racial myths could outmatch the relentless logic of production. The Reichsmarshal, who had once ridiculed American aircraft production, met death with the grim realization that in 1944 alone, U.S. factories had outproduced Germany's entire wartime output. His disdain for the industrial might of a democratic nation became history's costliest misjudgment, measured not in ridicule, but in the price of complete and total defeat. The United States manufactured 295,959 military aircraft, while Germany produced only 94,677. Yet the true triumph was not in sheer quantity, but in approach, demonstrating that free labor could surpass coerced work, that democratic collaboration could outperform authoritarian control, and that a diverse, immigrant-rich nation could rally together to accomplish feats once thought impossible. The B-24 bombers emerging from Willow Run's assembly lines every 63 minutes were more than machines. They embodied democracy's defiance of oppression. Every rivet was driven by women who had been housewives just months before. Engines were crafted by teenagers who had abandoned school to contribute. Wings were assembled by workers escaping poverty and prejudice. Together, they demonstrated that free people, united by purpose and conviction, could overwhelm tyranny not through force of arms alone, but through the unmatched power of collective production and industrious resolve. Hermann Göring mocked the notion that the United States could manufacture 50,000 aircraft each year. Yet America not only met that figure, but doubled it, reshaping the course of history. His ridicule now resonates as a monument to monumental misjudgment, the fatal underestimation of democratic industry by a man who grasped neither freedom nor production. Ultimately, Göring, along with the ideology he embodied, was buried beneath hundreds of thousands of planes, each one a testament to how industrial might turned his mockery into one of history's most decisive and total defeats.